Welcome to The Long Road. I'm your host, Chris Roberts. I'm just back from Washington, D.C. I went down to an education conference down in Washington, D.C., spent 4 days in Washington, D.C., and learned quite a bit. Learned about some of the good things that are happening in education, some of the not so good things that are happening in education. Listened to Secretary Duncan, Secretary of Education Duncan, listened to Condoleezza Rice and a number of other individuals, a president from GE and the president of the College Board, and listened to quite a bit of stuff. One of the little things that I found out that over 30% of the American who are from 17 to 25 cannot even pass the entrance exam, the educational portion of the entrance exam to go into the armed forces due to their lack of ability to read, write, and comprehend. And so that was really kind of shocking. But when you took over disabilities, obesity, and combined it with education, 70% of our military age young men and women cannot qualify to join the armed forces. So as a national security issue going forward is that we're going to have to depend as a nation on a very small group of young men and women that will go into the armed forces. Condoleezza Rice was pretty adamant about it. Our education problem is a really serious now national security interest. The individual from General Electric stated that there were over 2 million jobs in the United States that are going unfilled right now, again due to the lack of the education attainment by Americans. And he's not talking about the really high-tech jobs and everything, but he's talking about some jobs in the technical fields, the engineering fields, and just in some cases customer service to be able to talk about some of the stuff that they're selling, some of the products they're selling. Again, it was a lack of education, the poor quality of education. The president of the College Board, he says they're getting ready to redo the College Board exam, the SATs, and he's saying is all those old words that the only time you'll ever see them or use them is on the SAT, they're all being thrown out. They're putting in new words, basically everyday words, and saying, can you use these in communication? Can you use them in a correct manner with the correct understanding? And he's saying that there is going to be quite a shock for a lot of parents. They talked about the Common Core. New Hampshire is one of the 46 states that have adopted the Common Core. And one of the misconceptions about the Common Core is that it's the federal government that set the standard for the Common Core. The Common Core was devised and is still being developed by the states. The states are realizing if they're going to compete for jobs, they're going to compete for industries moving into their states, they need a well-educated workforce. So, like I said, 46 states have accepted the Common Core. 46 states will have 46 different ways to teach the Common Core, but there'll be basically one way to measure the Common Core. And basically right now, the president of the College Board expects when they're talking about the parents being shocked, especially middle-class parents, because we talk all the time about inner-city students, where places like Detroit or Chicago, where less than 50% of them will graduate, or poor students, low social economics, where 30 to 40% of them won't graduate. We talk about those are the problem children. And he says, we never talk about the suburbs where the children are getting honors, high honors, but still going to college and have to take remedial courses. He says that's going to be a shock to middle class suburbia when they find out that 20 to 30% more of their children will fail to meet the Common Core standards because, again, basically people will not be able to, teachers, administrators will not be, and states will not be able to make up their definition of what passing is. Common Core is going to ensure that our students know how to read, they know how to write, they know how to contrast and compare, they know how to do their math. And it's going to be tough. And the children are, without a doubt, in my mind and other people's mind, is that the children are going to make it. As Condoleezza Rice said, if you set a low standard, even the brightest students will live down to that low standard. And so that's what we're looking at. We don't want a low standard. We want to ensure that our children are competitive. The goal is we don't need to be competitive against Vermont or Massachusetts or Rhode Island or any place else. Well, we can't be competitive against Massachusetts because Massachusetts has the highest education standards in the nation. And they were told by the 128 Tech Corridor, if they don't improve the quality of education, the companies are moving out. So that's why Massachusetts standards are higher. And in fact, Massachusetts standards are higher than the Common Core standards. And so while we're worrying about competing against other states or competing against ourselves, our competitors are the world. And so the Germanys, the Chinas, the Japan, Singapore, Korea, those are our competitors. If we don't want to compete in the major leagues, we can stay in the drop down to the minor leagues and compete against ourselves or compete against our fellow states. That's a question. I think the majority of the American people believe that we're a major league country and we want to stay in the major leagues and we want to improve our major league standings. The other part of my trip, I was able to take advantage of driving down and driving back and went to 13 new national parks and went to a number of other ones that I had been before. I was able to go to Ford Theater, and I got there when it just lucked out that they opened the upstairs, and I was able to stand basically about 4 feet from where Abraham Lincoln was shot, able to see and real close where John Wilkes Booth walked in and shot Abraham Lincoln. And it was a strange and an eerie type of feeling. Then I was able to go across the street into the house that and stand right next to the bed that Abraham Lincoln died in. I had heard that the bed was small and he had to lay there kitty corner to as they were treating him, but it was so totally different to stand there and see the bed. It was, again, a type of strange feeling to stand in that room where for basically 10 hours, that was the government of the United States, while President Lincoln lay dying in the other room. And following that, I also went to Martin Luther King's memorial. Simplistic, but powerful. Franklin Roosevelt's memorial down the road from Martin Luther King. Again, simplistic, again, powerful. And then I moved on to Thomas and Jefferson's memorial. Went over to the Teddy Roosevelt Memorial on the Teddy Roosevelt Island. A statue of Teddy Roosevelt, bigger than life, full of life. On my way down, I had stopped at Eleanor Roosevelt's place in Van Kill, and able to, you sit on the porch overlooking the wooded area, looking down the hill where she spent most of her life, overlooking, and you go in, and yeah, I did go to Edgar Allan Poe's place and walk down in his basement. Yeah, it was kind of creepy, the place where he wrote the Raven. And again, then I also went to Independence Hall. Again, I lucked out. The upstairs was open, and I was able to go into the Independence Hall. But really, what I found really obstructing and totally educational was the presence. It was almost like these individuals' presence was still in these buildings. And I'm saying to myself, if anybody wanted to be a political leader or whatever, if I had my ways to the powers to be, anybody who got elected to state office or national office, I would make them take a trip to about 20 to 25 different national parks and realize how humbling it would be to be in the place of giants, to stand in the footsteps of giants, to hold the railing of giants and just sit there and wonder what they were saying, what they were thinking. Giants that didn't get along with each other. Giants in certain cases hated each other. But giants that determined that they were going to do the right thing, that they were going to subject the good of the whole. They were going to subject their own desires to the good of the whole. And you go in and you look at that, you feel that, you read that, and you realize that is one of the most lacking things in our government and in our leaders today. So one of the things, now going back to the educational forum I was at, a number of individuals talked about gifted children, gifted education. And Condoleezza Rice, basically a highly intelligent woman in her own right, great leadership abilities, basically said straight out to the class, we're not all above average, plain and simple. There are only a few gifted children. We have to be realistic. There's a reason most of us are average. We're not above average. There are so many parents out there who think that their children are above average at the minimum, and their children are gifted. Johnny walked before he was 9 months, so he was gifted. Susie said her first words at 6 months, so they were gifted. Pierre put the blocks and solved the puzzle at 13 months, so he was gifted. And what they weren't talking about was, the strange part? It always seemed to show up. It was people, the kids who were higher on a socioeconomic scale, kids who had educated parents, quote unquote, they were gifted. It was very rarely, if anything, was anybody talking about children of color or poor kids being gifted. Well, if poor kids or inner city kids or children that don't have a parent, children that have parents that may not have finished high school, let alone going to college, parents that have to work 8, 10 hours a day, maybe more, how would they be stimulated? How would they be educationally stimulated? How would they be gifted? If anything, they would start school behind their peers. Where if you go on the other side, if you go, for example, to the Y, and you'll see college-educated, stay-at-home moms bringing their children, 2, 3 years old, taking gymnastics, doing other exercises, being stimulated. The question is, are those children gifted, or did those children get extra education that allowed them to start ahead of their peers, and over time maybe their peers would catch up. I was expecting to have a few guests to talk from Gifted Children today, but for some reason, maybe a miscommunication, or they may have forgot, or whatever, they didn't make it. And so what I'm going to do in a few minutes is give about a 10-minute video clip on just what giftedness is. Because right now in Keene, we had a big discussion over the last budget cycle about gifted children, gifted education program. And some say gifted, some say gifted and talented. But what it shows out at gifted and talented are two different things. You can be gifted and talented. You can be gifted but not talented. You can be talented and gifted. And so there's a lot of myths and mistakes about what gifted and talented is. They're gifted and talented could be costly. I think we got pretty close to $70,000 or $80,000 in this year's budget. I would not be surprised if that number goes up to $100,000 to $150,000 in the budget going forward. There are school districts in the state of New Hampshire that are doing away with the gifted and talented programs as cost-cutting measures come, saying is, where do we get the most bang for the buck? And that's a big important question coming up. And one of the things that are going to have effect on the gifted and talented and the cost is, if you've been listening to the radio or reading the newspaper, you would have found out that you would have learned that the Keene School Board is being faced with an additional $700,000 increase in the retirement cost. And the city of Keene is going to face the same thing. The county is going to face the same thing. So it would not be unexpected for the taxpayers of Keene to have to pay over $1 million in the upcoming budget just for additional retirement costs and not get a single service in return. And prior to coming here, I went and reviewed a Morningstar report. Morningstar is a top-notch investment firm. They review all mutual funds and they give their 1 to 5 stars. And in 2009, the state of New Hampshire retirement fund was funded at 58.5%. Basically, you should be funded at 70% to be considered solvent. New Hampshire was one of 21 states that was considered insolvent in 2009. It had a $2.7 billion shortfall. So what the state did was it raised the amount that the local municipalities had to contribute to the retirement fund. It raised the amount that the number of the members had to contribute to the retirement fund. And in 2010, the state of New Hampshire, the retirement fund increased from 55.5 to 58.6% funded. But at the same time, its deficit rose $100 million to $2.8 billion. In 2011, as the stock market was increasing, the retirement fund dropped down 1.1% to 57.5%. So basically 57.5% when the minimum is 70%. But also this resulted, the deficit went from 2.8 to $3.25 billion. Basically in 1 year, the retirement deficit went up almost $500 million. And because that went up, that's why the local communities have to pay additional money. The taxpayers have to pay additional money to make up that deficit. And so what's going to happen is, for example, if we go into a recession, that deficit goes higher. And the higher that deficit goes, the more money that the local communities are going to have to pay. And basically, the local communities are going to have to lay off teachers, policemen, and firemen just to pay for retirement. So because of the mismanagement of the state for about 20 years on this retirement, not paying what they were supposed to be paying, not having the municipalities paying what they were supposed to be paying, it's kind of like the national debt. It's coming home to roost. We're going to have to pay, and we're going to have to make some really hard choices. And so Keene has the gifted and talented program. We're starting. So for one of the things to ask for, hopefully to help clarify some of the questions about what the gifted and talented program is, what gifted is, I'm going to roll this, I'm going to have Ernie roll this clip. It'll be about 10 or 11 minutes. And then I'll come back and we'll talk about some of the other things concerning gifted and talented programs. Roll it, Ernie.
Giftedness. Wisdom begins with wonder. Heredity and opportunity. What factors influence giftedness? At Stanford University in 1916, Lewis Terman adapted Alfred Binet's intelligence test into the Stanford Binet test and created the term intelligent quotient. According to Terman, the IQ was one's mental age compared to one's physical age. A professional colleague of Terman's, Leda Hollingworth, was the first in the United States to study how best to serve students who showed evidence of high performance on tests. Although recognizing Terman's and Galton's belief that heredity played a vital role in intelligence, Hollingworth gave similar credit to home environment and school structure. What about other types of intelligence? Gardner's multiple intelligences. Howard Gardner developed the theory of multiple intelligences, which says that IQ should not be measured as an absolute figure in the way that height or weight is. It's a mistake to assume that IQ is a single fixed entity, which can be measured by a pencil and paper test. It's not how smart you are, but how you are smart, says Gardner. As human beings, we all have a repertoire of skills for solving different kinds of problems. And he defines intelligence this way. And intelligence is an ability to solve a problem or fashion a product which is valued in one or more cultural settings. Joseph Renzulli's definition of gifted behavior occurs when there's an interaction between three basic clusters of traits: above average abilities, high level of task commitment, and high levels of creativity. Where the three rings overlap is said to be where the gifted and talented students are found. In Gagne's differentiated model of giftedness and talent, gifts, which are untrained natural abilities, must be developed into talents. This developing of talents can be either facilitated or hindered by two types of catalysts: intrapersonal and environmental. Factors influencing giftedness: special aptitude, non-intellective facilitators, environmental supports, general ability, and chance. Researchers have consistently identified these characteristics as relating to general intellectual ability in gifted students. Has an extensive and detailed memory, particularly in an area of interest. Has vocabulary advanced for age. Has communication skills advanced for age and is able to express ideas and feelings. Asks intelligent questions. Is able to identify the important characteristics of new concepts and problems. Learns information quickly. Uses logic in arriving at common sense answers. Has a broad base of knowledge. Understands abstract ideas and complex concepts. Uses analogical thinking, problem solving, or reasoning. Observes relationships and sees connections. Finds and solves difficult and unusual problems. Understands principles, forms generalizations, and uses them in new situations. Wants to learn and is curious. works conscientiously and has a high degree of concentration in areas of interest, understands and uses various symbol systems, is reflective about learning. Researchers have also identified general characteristics for gifted students in the artistic fields. Gifted students choose artistic activities for projects or during free time. They strive to improve artistic skills. They concentrate for longer periods of time on artistic projects. They seem to pick up skills in the arts with little or no instruction. They possess high sensory sensitivity. They observe and show interest in others who are proficient in the artistic skill. They use the artistic area to communicate. They experiment in the artistic medium. And they set high standards in the artistic area. Gifted acceleration. In 2004, the John Templeton Foundation sponsored a report titled A Nation Deceived: How Schools Hold Back America's Brightest Students. The national report highlighted the disparity between the research on acceleration and the educational beliefs and practices that often run contrary to the research. Research continuously demonstrates the positive impacts of the various forms of acceleration. Yet the educational establishment, especially at the elementary and middle school level, remains skeptical, based on implications of ruined scope and sequence charts and ungrounded fears of hampering healthy social-emotional adjustment. As noted in this volume, voices in the field of gifted education and psychology, spurred by current and relevant studies, have consistently sustained support for acceleration, yet to little or no avail. So how do you meet the needs of gifted students? Differentiation can help improve outcomes for gifted students by incorporating principles such as evaluation, self-understanding, novelty, diversity, challenge, integration of curricula areas, complexity, acceleration, choice, reinforcing learning experiences, depth and breadth, independence, open-ended tasks, higher order thinking, product development, research skills and method, advanced content. Personalized learning promotes equity and excellence in education. Equity, narrowing the attainment gap, addressing needs of different student groups, supporting students from low socioeconomic groups, supporting every child to reach minimum standards in English and math. Excellence, challenging every child to realize their maximum potential, helping every child to realize their aspirations, helping every child make maximum progress, using a teaching approach that takes into account multiple abilities. Some myths about giftedness. Gifted students don't need help. They'll do fine on their own. The truth is, the role of the teacher is crucial for spotting and nurturing talents in school. Teachers challenge all students, so gifted kids will be fine in the regular classroom. The truth is, although teachers try to challenge all students, they are frequently unfamiliar with the needs of gifted children and do not know how best to serve them in the classroom. Gifted students make everyone else in the class smarter by providing a role model or a challenge. The truth is, in reality, average or below average students do not look to gifted students in the class as role models. They are more likely to model their behavior on those who have similar capabilities and are coping well in school. All children are gifted. The truth is, while all children are special and deserving, not all children have exceptional academic gifts that require additional or different support in school. Acceleration placement options are socially harmful for gifted students. The truth is, academically gifted students often feel bored or out of place with their age peers and naturally gravitate towards older students who are more similar as intellectual peers. Gifted education programs are elitist. The truth is, gifted education is not about status. It's about meeting students' needs. That student can't be gifted. He's receiving poor grades. The truth is, underachievement describes the discrepancy between a student's performance and his actual ability. The roots of this problem differ based on each child's experiences. Gifted students may become bored or frustrated in an unchallenging classroom situation, causing them to lose interest, learn bad study habits, or distrust the school environment. Other students may mask their abilities to try to fit in socially with their same-age peers. Gifted students are happy, popular, and well-adjusted in school. The truth is, many gifted students flourish in their community and school environment. However, some gifted children differ in terms of their emotional and moral intensity, sensitivity to expectations and feelings, perfectionism, and deep concerns about societal problems. Others do not share interests with their classmates, resulting in isolation or being labeled unfavorably as a nerd. This child can't be gifted, he has a disability. The truth is, some gifted students also have learning or other disabilities. These twice exceptional students often go undetected in regular classrooms because their disability and gifts mask each other, making them appear average. Gifted education requires abundant resources. The truth is, a belief that gifted students require something different from regular curriculum, followed by hard work and commitment from community and district personnel, are the most critical components in designing and implementing successful gifted education programs and services. Excellence in education is when we do everything we can to make sure that they become everything they can be. So who is gifted?
Well, we're back, and I'm sorry about the type being so small, but I think because they read it and they read it in a quite understandable way, and then the other charts, excuse me, could be quite helpful. So part of it was trying to give you a little understanding of a really complicated issue of what is giftedness, and again, how to identify a child that's gifted. If you went to Google or Bing or Yahoo and say gifted child, gifted education, you'll be able to get millions and millions of hits to decide where to go. And and there's a lot of people out there making an awful lot of money going in and telling parents that your child is gifted and you really need to put them in an accelerated course, of course, at a certain cost, and we'll be able to help your child. And but again, the question is the accelerated program helping the child to get ahead, or is it actually benefit the child because the child is gifted? And the other question I think you heard on here is gifted. I could go and say that I'm gifted, but I'm not gifted in math, I'm not gifted in English, I'm not gifted in history, I am not gifted in any one subject. I'm not an expert in any one subject. But one of the criterias of one part of giftedness was to be able to go, like it said, over a wide area. And I know sometimes I frustrate people because I can talk about a lot of different subjects with a high level of knowledge. And so, to me, yep, it's a gift. I know it sometimes frustrates people when they go, how can you do the city council, the county, the school board, the state house? To me, it's pretty easy. I just combine them all together, and I can see where there's the connections and where's the distortions. I can see how if I make a vote in the city council, how it may affect the school board and the state house, and vice versa. So if you have a child like that, if you have a child like me that reads and reads and reads all the time, how does the school program, how would a gifted program in the school take care of that child? For example, the autistic one. Okay, what happens if the child is really autistic? Not autistic, autistic, and loves to paint, loves to do all this other, and is unbelievable at what they're doing. But they're not into English, they're not into language arts. So, or one mechanically gifted, or Thomas, for example, Tom Edison, electrically gifted, Al Einstein, scientifically gifted, and so his part, they always try to go and say, identify the gifted. And they'll say these over again. Einstein was 4 years old before he could speak, and 7 before he could read. Well, boys, for example, have speech delay. We can go into our preschool and you'll find a number of boys who are getting speech therapy because they're speech delayed. And 7 before he could read. Well, I can guarantee you that we have a lot of kids in kindergarten and first grade, 5, 6, and some 7, that are very poor readers. And so again, that doesn't make them gifted. That could make them, as it says, environmental factors. If you go down to Railroad Square and you see some of those kids hanging out with their 2 and 3 year old children hanging out with their teenage mom and dads who are not high school graduates, that's an environmental factor, quote unquote, that could put them in the same category as Einstein. Isaac Newton did poorly in grade school. Okay, yep, Isaac Newton, apple dropping on the head, part of gravity. Again, did he do poorly in grade school because he just wasn't interested in a lot of stuff and he had a singular focus? And it goes, F.W. Woolworth got a job in a dry goods store when he was 21, but his employer would not let him wait on a customer because he didn't have enough sense. How does this have to do with giftedness? He may not have been able to interact very well with people. And so not everybody is a great salesperson. A newspaper editor fired Walt Disney because he had no great ideas. Well, maybe Walt Disney wasn't fit to be a newspaper reporter. That wasn't his calling. His calling was artistic. His calling was Showboat Willie and those Donald Duck. That was his calling. It was a mismatch. Caruso's music teacher told him, "You can't sing, you have no voice at all." Admiral Richard E. Byrd had been retired from the Navy as unfit for service until he flew over both poles. Well, you know what? You could have high blood pressure. You could suffer a major illness. You could suffer a major illness injury and not be fit for service. Louis Pasteur was rated as mediocre in chemistry when he attended Royal College. Okay, yes, there's a lot of people, quote unquote, that are mediocre and they keep working and they keep reading and they keep learning and get better. Fred Warren was once rejected from high school chorus. Winston Churchill failed the 6th grade. This falls under identifying the gifted. So if I wanted to go and convince parents that their children were truly gifted, I could use any number of these examples and really get the parent, yes, your child is gifted. If your child failed 6th grade, that's okay. Winston Churchill failed 6th grade, and look what he became, Prime Minister of England. Einstein couldn't read until he was 7. No problem at all. Your child should be able to make it. And Caruso couldn't sing. So you have no voice at all, but he became a famous tenor. Again, a lot of times what seems to be common in here is that all these individuals came face to face with rejection. And it seems that all these individuals weren't happy with rejection, did not accept rejection, and they worked harder to make themselves better to overcome rejection. So, if anything, you could say these children were resilient. And so there's quite a big difference between being gifted and being resilient. And then when we talked about the characteristics of many of the gifted children, many gifted children learn to read early with better comprehension of the nuance of language. As much as half the gifted and talented population have learned to read before entering school. Again, as the clip had gone and said, there's environmental factors that that play a big role in whether Johnny or Susie or Alice or Tom learn to read, know how to read before they show up in school. Gifted children commonly learn basic skills better, more quickly, and with less practice. Well, basic skills, again, you could go in and learn your ABCs. You can learn how to add and subtract. You can learn your multiplication. You can learn your colors before you even go to school. They usually respond and relate well to parents, teachers, and other adults. They may prefer the company of older children and adults to those of their peers. Well, if you're the only child or you're one of two children in a stay-at-home mom or dad who are college educated, you're getting the plenty of attention. That's your environment. That's how you're going to learn to react. That's one of the biggest complaints people have about homeschooling. The homeschooling children, they can be better educated, but the question is, are they properly socialized with their peers? If they're not properly socialized with their peers, and there's ways to do it outside of homeschooling, if they're not properly socialized with their peers, the only way the people they interact with are adults. Learning characteristics. They may show keen powers of observation and a sense of significance. They may have an eye for important details. They often attack complicated material by separating into components and analyzing it systematically. They are often skeptics, criticals, and evaluate. They are quick to spot inconsistencies. Now you're getting someplace. Now this is differential. Now you're getting to the point where these are the type of children that are going to need to be educated in a different manner. The ones that are not going to be able to go with the normal pattern or the normal accepted way of education. Creative characteristics. They're original thinkers, thinking new, unusual, and uncontroversial association. They also see relationships between among seamlessly unrelated objects, ideas, or facts. They are good guesses and can readily construct hypotheses or what-if questions. They often display intellectual playfulness and like to fantasize in imagination. Again, differential than their peers, again, requiring additional or different types of education. And so that's when you get some of the difference going on. These are some of these last two groups are ones where you normally wouldn't be the result of environmental situations or the result of additional classes or additional stimulus by parents. Highly gifted children tend to be those who demonstrate asynchronic, I can't even pronounce the word, development. Due to their highly continent abilities and high intensities, they experience and relate to the world in a unique way. These children are often found as a result of extreme high scores on individually scored IQ, generally above the 140 IQ range. Others may be prodigies in area such as math, science, language, and/or arts. Profoundly gifted children can score in excess of 170 IQ. If the average IQ is 100, if you're looking at 140, there are very few children out there. If you're looking at 170, we may go a lifetime and never find or never meet a child at 170 IQ. But something that was really critical, they may be prodigies in areas such as math, science, language, and/or arts. Not gifted across a wide spectrum, but gifted in a certain field like math or like science. They may pass unbelievably in math and just barely make it in English. The child of 160 plus is as different from the child of 130 as the child is different from the child of 100. Current research suggests that there may be higher incidence of children in the higher range than previously thought. Due to their unique characteristics, these children are particularly vulnerable. Highly gifted children need a specialized advocate because very little has been done to develop appropriate curriculum and non-traditional option for these children. And so this is from the Howling Wirtz Center for Highly Gifted Children. Here comes the big question is, what is gifted? What is talent? What is mildly gifted, above average giftedness, highly giftedness? It's not something simple. And while it's really important that we challenge these children and give them the best education possible, we really need to sit down and decide what giftedness is and who actually qualifies for giftedness. And maybe if some of the children, especially in high school, qualified as gifted, maybe we as a community need to send them to Keene State College or one of the community college to get stimulated more at a higher level because we can't provide it or we can't afford to provide it at the high school. And so to me, this is a discussion that really needs to has to happen. We owe it to these children. Even if there's a possibility, there may only be 20 to 25 children out of the 3,800 in our school system that qualifies for giftedness programs. We need to identify them. We need to educate them. We need to challenge them. We need to be able to bring the best out of these children. And because when we bring the best out of these children, they help improve the other students around them. So, again, I'm sorry our guests who were, quote, experts in gifted children. I'm sorry they didn't make it today. They would have added a heck of a lot more to this than that I could have or I did. And so hopefully I'll be able to get them back on again. Again, so if you have any questions about gifted children, or whether your child qualifies, or if your child is, how your child can benefit, go to Google, go to Ones. There are a lot of good sources out there that can provide you additional information, far more than I can, and in greater detail than I can. And so, and then again, come to the school board meetings and ask questions. It's our responsibility to give you the answers. So thank you for listening in. And again, if you have any questions, go to the school board and say, what about this? What about that? Or if not the school board, go to your local principal and have your principal give you some answers. So again, thank you for being with us, and I will see you out on the long road. Next week, we'll be with Ruth Sterling and an update on the Pumpkin Fest. Thank you.